Hi guys, it's Kelly Latevola here, and I am back with another video for honeybee stamps. As you can see, I am totally feeling spring. If you've been following my videos, you know I am all about just embracing as much spring in my craft room as I possibly can because it just refuses to arrive in Ohio. So I'm using Silent Night, the stamp set and the die. I'm using the birds and the bees. I thought I was going to use the die, but turns out I didn't because I don't know how to pre-plan a card. And then I'm using the dearly loved stamp set and dies. So my game plan going in was to stamp a couple trees in the background, stamp a tree separately, die cut it, pop it up, and then die cut my deer, pop my deer up. That was my game plan. Now, in this set, this tree, quote unquote tree, is actually a branch because you know I'm all about getting more out of my stamps. And especially in the spring, like all the trees barely have leaves on them. And then they start to get their little blooms, and cherry blossoms are my favorite. There is two little flowers in the stamp set that look just like cherry blossoms. And I was like, yes, I will use you. I will use you and you will make me happy. Pretty much what happened. Exactly what happened, in fact. So I did have to cut a mask for the tree, which was not the worst mask I have ever had to cut, but it is a little bit challenging. I'm gonna be real with you. If I had done it the way I had originally intended to, this would not have been necessary because I would have stamped two trees in the background and then popped one of them up. So the masking wouldn't have been necessary. Not what I did. So clearly, here we are. Now this branch has like a natural arch to it. I'm going to pick it up with my Misty, and then I'm just going to move the base of it so this one's standing straight so it doesn't look like two of the exact same tree. And then I'm going to stamp that down. Speaking of stamping, I am using the Gina K Amalgam Black ink because it is Copic safe, and I am pretty much using nothing but Copic markers on this. So I'm going to stamp this one down. And then I'm going to, with the other one masked, is when I'm going to go back and stamp the other tree. And I did it the same way where I moved the base of the tree so it wouldn't all look like the same tree. Now, I wanted it to be a scene because you know how I love scenes. And so I needed to fill in a little bit of the area in the background. And in the Silent Night set, there's this little tree that doesn't have any leaves or anything on it. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll use this is Warm Wool by W+9. I don't know if you would call this a cool brown or a warm gray, but it is somewhere in between the two. And then I used second generation stamping as first generation and second generation to kind of fill in that area. So some of the trees are darker than the other ones, which I really like because I didn't want this to be a focal point. Remember, I just wanted it to kind of fill in the background and give my forest, my field, no, it's definitely not a field. There's mad trees in this thing. My forest, a more full feel. So I did have to mask to do that part of it. But again, probably wouldn't have been a huge deal if I had been popping up the tree. The little cherry blossoms, I'm not masking for any of this. I'm just filling them in the areas around the leaves where I can fill them in. And then your eyes just kind of got to make the connection. There are a few areas where I did mask the tree, but I just used like the side of one of the pieces of masking tape. Oh, which by the way, I was using Eclipse masking paper. Masking tape? Masking paper. I think it's masking paper. I'm not really sure. I link it. You know I do. So then here in the Silent Night set, there's like these little grasses, which I love because obviously deer are not only out during the winter. And so I'm stamping these down in green ink. And eventually when we get to the end of it, you're going to be like, Kelly, why did you even stamp those down? And I will explain to you why I did, because I had a purpose. So this is a fairly narrow strip, maybe 3/4 of an inch. And so I wanted mine to come up a little higher, so I just stamped it twice. Now I'm going to stamp this deer, which I love, but I didn't realize how big the deer was. The deer is a very good size. So this is where the tree situation went awry, where my game plan with the tree went awry. But I'm not mad at it because ultimately I really love the way the card came out. I wanted a springtime card, and that is exactly what I got. Here, we're going to be coloring the tree and the flowers on this separate sheet of paper. Because remember, I thought I was going to be die cutting it. I didn't. Also, of note, I didn't film me coloring the trees in the background because I filmed me coloring this tree. However, I colored them slightly differently. I know. I know. It's probably not the best tutorial that we've ever done here, but that's okay. We're going to make it through. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading where the branches are meeting the base of the tree. And then most of my shading is going to go on the left-hand side because that's just my preference. Light source in the top right would cast shadows on the bottom left. So everything that I am doing, okay, so the E40 goes down, fills in the whole thing. E42 shades it slightly on the left. E44, again, slightly shades it on the left. That is how all of the trees in the actual card look. Bam, right here. You got it. With this one, because it was going to be my focal point tree, I did add some bark or wood grain texture to it. You can absolutely do this. I just I wanted a focal point tree, so that's why I didn't add it to all of them. I didn't want them competing with each other. But turns out that I probably could have because they all were just chilling in the background. And this poor little guy is never going to see this card. He might see another card, but he's not going to see this card. So just added a little bit of darker shading with the E49 in only really the darkest parts, and then in the wood grain, it wasn't like a huge swipe of it. And then I'm going to go back through and blend everything out before we move on to the leaves. This is a very long video. I guess it's probably, I should say it's a very long video, but it's probably average length for my videos. But that's okay because we're doing a lot of things. What am I doing here? This week is thinly controlled chaos in my life. That's where I'm at. I have a lot of projects that I have to get done, and then I have a lot of work that I'm doing. So I worked day shift today. Well, I worked afternoon shift yesterday to get up for day shift today, which thankfully I had a little bit of flexibility with my hours this morning. Praise Jesus. So for the leaves, I'm just really going to add shading at the base of them where they're connecting to their stems. And then if one leaf is laying on top of the other one, that casts one object on top of another. It casts a shadow. So we're going to add that little bit of shadow right in there. So the week so far is worked yesterday, worked today. Tomorrow, Peanut has a doctor's appointment because they do the eye and hearing screenings at school, and he failed his hearing test. Now, obviously, outside of just flat out ignoring me, my child does hear, so we're not really sure what's going on, if maybe he didn't understand the test, like the beeps and things like that. Side note about the card. So here I've picked 3 pinks for my little cherry blossoms. I'm filling it all in with the RV00, adding a little circle of RV02, and then an even smaller one of RV04, and then just putting the YO2 right in the center there, and they'll all be colored the same way. So yeah, we're not really sure what's up with that. So we're taking him to a specialist. Now, the last time that he was sick and had to go to his pediatrician, when they looked in his ears, they said he has a lot of congestion in his ears, which sounds weird because typically you think congestion nose, but they said congestion ears, and obviously they're all interconnected. So we're going to a ear, nose, throat specialist tomorrow to see if in fact there is any reason to be concerned, or if maybe he just has some sinus issues, which wouldn't surprise me because, as you all know, if you watch the videos, occasionally I also have some sinus issues. For this deer, I wanted to color its belly and its chest white. I also added a little bit of shading of this to the bottom of his face and that side of his neck because of the way he's facing. That would actually be the front of his neck where this white already is. And I am really playing up kind of the fuzziness that's drawn into his, I almost called it chest. I guess it is chest hair. Chest fur. Chest hair. Chest fur. Chest fur. That's what I'm going with. And so I'm really just only adding a little bit of shading to the lines that are already there, and then just a few kind of flicks of color in the center so that it gives a fuzzy texture. And then I'm adding shading to the belly where his leg is coming up over his belly. and where the other one is tucked back. And then I thought it would be cute to get him a little white fuzzy tail because, well, that's adorable, honestly. Now you can see me continually shading his back ear with the gray. This is strictly because I was not paying attention. And at some point I will fix it when we get to the browns. But the inside of his ear would be that like lightish gray pink color. It's not pink yet. Don't worry, you're not seeing things. But the outside of his ear would be that brown, and then I realized I should have been coloring it. Like, I didn't even need to be shading that part. But anywho, moving on to the brown. I'm going to flick this down and towards the gray that I already have going on, so that eventually I can blend them together and they'll look a little bit more seamless. So we have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Then I have to go to work. Then from there, the following day, I have to work a double. I have to teach at the college in the morning and then work in the police station in the evening. Same thing on Wednesday, y'all. Thursday, I have to prepare for, and this is why all of my things, all of my card making things have to get done and knocked out of the way, because I am going to Simon Says Stamp Create. So if you are there, please come over and say hello. I would love to meet you and hug you and all kinds of things. I will not be there with Honeybee Stamps, but they will also be there. And the lovely ladies from there, I'm super excited to be able to see them and hug them because I love them so much. And so make sure you stop by their table as well. There's a whole section, I mean, just a huge, massive section. So even if you didn't buy tickets to Create, but you're in the area or you're down for a road trip, there's all of these make and takes that you can do, and there's a pop-up store for the products that we'll be using, that they'll be using in classes, and really, honestly, who doesn't, I mean, do you really need an excuse to come out and meet people who share a love of the same hobby that you have? Because I honestly do not. Like, those people are far too rare in my life for me to pass up an opportunity to meet them. So very excited about that, but that means that this week is just crazy, trying to get other things done and accomplished before I have to head down to Columbus. Yeah, so I am excited though. I think that anytime a group of crafters gets together, it's just filled with, a lot of laughter and love and kindness, and that makes me happy because I also get to see my friends, and a lot of my friends, because we live in so many different areas of the country, some people live in different countries. I don't get to see them that often, and so I definitely try to make it down there whenever I can. So, or to any of the events that I can, so that I can see everybody and just love them to pieces for the few couple of days that we get together. For the shading of the deer's body, I have been basically adding the darkest parts on the top so that the lighter color will blend into that gray. Also kind of making the back legs a little bit darker, so that they look like they're behind the front legs. Just doing that, not by really changing up the color too much, but just by adding more of the darker colors in the back. For his adorable little tushy here, I had to be very careful about the amount of shading that I added because I didn't want the back of his front leg to be dark as well as the top of his back leg to be dark. Man, I hope that makes sense. It was kind of hard to say. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of color differentiation there so that one did, in fact, look like it was behind the other. Now that all of that is done, we're going to go back through, blend them out. You know the deal, lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest, so that everything is all filled in the same color that I want. I love, this is like my go-to. My Copic go-to for browns is the E50 family. I just love them. They are my favorite. And I just think it's such a perfect deer color. Like it's just such a warm brown, which is why I chose the cooler browns, the E40s, for the trees, so that they would stand out from each other and there wouldn't be any competition. Speaking of things that Copics that are my favorite. So for a long, long time, you guys have all asked me, like, what are your favorite Copic combinations? Do you have a page? Do you have a thing I can look at? Do you have a guide? And I just always felt like there were so many out there that I didn't need to have one. Like, there were just so many out there for every individual artist. And so I never put one together. I actually bought mine off of Jennifer McGuire's recommendations because she loves bright colors. I love bright colors. So it made sense to me to just go ahead and purchase most of the ones that she recommended. Then from there, because Jennifer and I are obviously very different artists, very different card makers, and I do Copic color more than she does, I eventually added some lighter tones and darker tones to the recommendations that she had and made my collection my own. And since I have strayed so far from the original one that I purchased, because for years I've just been sending you guys over to Jennifer's. Like, these are the ones I started with. You know, that was my beginner set. I bought a Groupon, and then I just went to, I think it was Jerry's Artorama that my Groupon was for, courtesy Libby Hickson. Thank you, Libby, all those years ago. And so I went there, and then I just bought all of the ones that I could buy with my Groupon, and that's how I started my Copic collection. I'm adding little white dots. There are dots that are drawn on this deer, so for the most part I followed those, and then I just added in some smaller ones, and then I also added them on the top of the head and along the little flower stamen. I'm going to outline everything because you know how I roll. I love that bold black outline, and really at the end of it, the only die cut that ended up being outlined was the deer, because it's the only one that I used that was an image. So anywho, I did finally come up with a Copic recommendation list. It's on my blog. I shared it over on the community page of YouTube. So that'll just be there forever, ever. It's right at the top header. It says Copic color combinations, and I just listed all of the ones that I use the most, and then the ones that I use for skin tones. Even though I don't necessarily, like, I have one go-to skin tone, I do try to make sure that I include other races and everything in my cards when I'm coloring them. So I put down the ones that I use for those things as well. So you're more than welcome to check that out. I don't plan on deleting it ever because it took me a hot minute to put it together. But yeah, so here in the background, obviously I can't just leave it white. So I used a W1 to kind of put in the ground for the forest bottom, and then I used a B quadruple. It's a quadruple. It's for 0000 to blend out kind of upward into the sky. Then I'm going to go back in with this B00, and I'm going to outline all of my trees. This is kind of like a little bit of a trick to make the sky look blue and make these stand out from the background without having to mask everything and use Distress ink or Distress Oxide, or use all of my Copic ink to color in all of this white space. The blue kind of tricks you into believing that it's, you know, blue sky up there without having to do a ton of it. Now I brought down the W1 a little bit lower, and now I'm adding in some YG01 on top of that, because obviously the forest floor would not just be brown, it would have some green in it. And I am coloring over all of the stamping that I did before. This is something that's a cool little trick. So we stamped the grass and the trees in the background in W+9 ink. Now, there's specific ink that is Copic friendly, which means it doesn't smear or lighten or any of those things when you put Copics over it. W+9 ink is not that kind of ink. However, if you use them together, you can get a softer or a more blended look. So it makes them really good for, like, no line coloring or things like this, where I want to push those into the background. I can just color right over top of them, and it kind of varies the color by lightening it up. So depending upon what kind of look you're going for, you hear us say all the time, you know, it's Copic friendly. That just means it won't smear. That doesn't mean you can't use other inks with your Copics. It just depends on what you're looking for. For the grass, did this the way that I always do, filled it in with my lightest color, and then went back through with each consecutively darker color and just used small flicking motions to create some grasses. I'm not really looking for any kind of uniformity here, and they taper off as they move towards the back of the card, because you wouldn't see as much detail, but he's in a wild field, so I don't need to worry about, you know, whether or not my grass are all the same length. It doesn't matter. Once that's done, this is why I use the stamp, this right here. Now you can see the stamp amongst all of these grasses in real life, but I used them to create flowers. I'm just doing 3 little dots right on top of it so that it looks like a field of flowers. It is difficult to see on camera, I'm not going to lie to you guys, but in real life, the recipient of this card will be able to see those little flowers. I'm going to go ahead and die cut all of my things and then realize I wasted all of my time coloring this tree and these flowers, but that is what it is. I wanted to use the die cuts that match this Dearly Loved set, because I think that script is just beautiful. One of my favorite things about Honeybee Stamps is their script sentiments. I just love them. And so in order for it to say Dearly Loved, I wanted them to be matchy-matchy, so I'm doing some heat embossing. This is I treated it, words are hard. I treated it with my embossing buddy, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp in Versamark ink, and then some white embossing powder, and then I always have my heat tool already heating up while I'm doing all of this stuff, so that way it limits the amount of warping to your paper. I'm going to heat set that until it's all clear and shiny. This is one of my tricks for if I get embossing powder places that I don't want. I will go over the paper with a Copic marker. But here's the deal, y'all. You're going to be able to see the difference between the Copic marker and the paper, so you have to commit to it. You have to color the whole piece of paper with that black marker. You're going to be able to see it otherwise, which means the recipient of your card will be able to see it. So here, I glued my deer down flat. I felt like my little birdie was not popping. He was kind of blending into the background. So I thought, well, maybe I'll make him more of a bluish red, like more of a deep purple. And I didn't really love this. So then I went in with an actual purple. And it doesn't change any of the shading. It's called glazing. So it just allows those reds to pick up that purple tone. And then I liked that a lot better. I felt like it didn't blend in as much. I'm going to go in against my little deer feet here, and I'm going to add in a shadow to ground him so it doesn't look just like this die cuts pasted on top of the scene. However, that does mean that I have to do the little grasses right up over my die cut. This may make some of you nervous, but you can tell it's starting to blend his little feet into the grass, so it does look like he is more part of the scene, where at the top that white border makes him pop out from the trees. So I really liked the way that that looked. I'm going to use the same thing, Tombow Mono multi-glue, to put together my sentiments. So just adding some glue onto the back of my white die cut. Originally, I had these reversed. I die cut the Dearly script in black and then the outline in white, and I didn't like that nearly as well. I just felt like it popped better with the black. So I'm going to glue that down, and then I'm going to cover both of these things with just all of the Scotch foam tape. Just all of it. And you know I hate the little finicky bits. I don't like them at all, but sometimes it's necessary in order to get the look that you want. So I have all these little teeny tiny Scotch foam pieces that I have cut to fit my die cut. Going to remove all the backing paper off of those so that I can stick it down. I kind of angled it a little bit because I thought that that would be cute, and then I'm going to tuck in the little loved right underneath that. So it says Dearly Loved, which, come on, that's so charming. It's just such a cutie little thing to say. And then I'm going to add some clear Wink of Stella to my bird and then to my flowers. And then that is it. That's pretty much the whole card right there. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And then if you're in town next weekend, I hope to be able to see you. And I know the girls from Honeybee will be excited to meet you as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.